Hello, and welcome to Chat DPS with Robert Feldman and myself, Nick Lovell. This week, we don our divers, mask, and flippers to bring you Chat DPS. So whilst Brisbane recovers from another natural disaster, we take a look at some of the some other ones that have been a little bit more man-made. First, a good news story with a cyber gang being apprehended and charged. Next, we turn to a warning issued by an ASIO leader regarding our critical infrastructure. We then look to an endpoint protection user report highlighting SMS scams. And finally, we turn our attention to healthcare, which is becoming a little bit more of a worry and a little bit more in focus for us all. So, Robert, 8base. This group of cyber criminals caught in a web of their own making, and in a coordinated global sting, it was saying in the news that the law enforcement agencies from the US, Europe, and Asia have taken down the notorious 8base ransomware crew. There's some really interesting points in here. So a gang's accused of extorting $16 million. Over about 1,000 victims across the world. 8base have been active since around May 2019, I think. And the US Department of Justice have issued a redacted paper from the District Court of Maryland. The paper is going into detail about how two individuals, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce their names because it's very heavily Russian. So two individuals, how they extorted money from organizations taking control of their computers using malware and then encrypting the data and taking Bitcoin to release the keys. You made a couple of observations around this already, haven't you? You've read those papers.
Yeah. Well, one thing stood out. So I looked through the indictment. So what was quite interesting was the US authorities made the indictment public, and it goes through in detail. How brazen they were in terms of going onto these forums on the dark web and just sort of saying, "Hey, we're looking to start extorting various organisations," and actually, and so one of the paragraphs that stood out was one of these criminals, Berezhnoi, stated that the target corporate network should have revenue of at least 5 million. And the team was interested in networks located in the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, Italy, France, and Germany. So I think that's quite interesting, isn't it?
Wow.
And it kind of bears out in terms of some of the surveys that we've looked, in terms of where the trends are going in terms of cyber attacks. And we keep seeing Australia in that top 5 or top 10 targeted countries, and this bears out in terms of what the cyber criminals are targeting. These are generally speaking affluent Western countries who clearly have shown the ability to pay, and there you go, Australia right in amongst that group.
Yeah, and it looks to me like the papers to me were very, very highly detailed, and it looks like the Americans are throwing the whole truckload at them. So computer fraud, wire fraud, along with forfeiture of property and assets. So I'm rather pleased to see that the guys in white hats are actually beginning to get some traction, hopefully.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's good to see this coordinated effort. It's great that they managed to arrest these guys, and they may not have been the smartest ones. I suppose the thing is that the battle is ongoing. So that as one criminal gang gets arrested, others will pop up. So it's an ongoing fight, and we have to stay vigilant.
Yeah, indeed. So moving quickly onwards, there's an ASIO boss who's been warning Australian critical infrastructure systems are routinely mapped. So the ASIO Director General is a guy called Mike Burgess, and he's warned that foreign regimes are actively prepositioning cyber access vectors that they can exploit in the future. Now, then this looks a lot to me like we've got a little bit to be worried about. So he's alleged that cyber units from at least one nation state routinely try to explore and exploit Australia's critical infrastructure networks, almost certainly mapping systems so that they can lay down malware and maintain access in the future. Wow, this is kind of like pretty heady stuff, right? We're moving into times in the geopolitical world where this is becoming a little bit of a concern. And I mean, things like lorry movements and goodness knows what that, things like that could bring the whole food basket to a grinding halt, right?
And yeah, absolutely. And this is probably one of the key reasons why legislation in that critical infrastructure space has been beefed up so much over the last couple of years, because the focus, I mean, the government's recognized these vulnerabilities across multiple sectors, and food and supermarkets is one, but obviously it applies to pipelines and financial institutions and all sorts of telecommunications. So across a whole wide range of sectors. So that's why they got added when the security of critical infrastructure legislation was updated, and has been updated several times over the last few years. And why so much onus has been now put onto organizations to update the assets they have, put in place for certain organizations risk management programs to really manage their assets and really build up that cyber resilience, and it's in response to issues such as these.
Yeah, and I think the really big issue in there was that he was expecting the whole thing to get a lot worse over the coming 5 years, which does put a fairly significant midterm kind of time frame around things. He's also predicted that AI will enable disinformation and deepfakes that can promote false narratives, undermine factual information, and erode trust in institutions. That's a fairly significant sort of claim, isn't it?
Claim, but also we see that more and more, particularly over the last few years, particularly in relation to elections and in relation to certain social media platforms. And one of the things that has been talked about is putting forward some sort of disinformation, misinformation legislation that combats this sort of attack on, like you say, on institutions, on governments, to try and undermine these institutions. So absolutely, we're going to see more of that, and the use of AI, generative AI, to create these campaigns, these bots firing out all of this potential propaganda, and the deepfakes as well. We've seen people duped by deepfakes and extorted on the basis of that. So these things are happening. So yes, we're seeing it more and more, and of course the trend will go up the more that people get access, and the more these large language models and the like improve.
Yeah, I mean the ability to see this going forward is a real challenge, and it's not just the tech bros, is it, that they're ahead of it. There's a great deal more responsibility that needs to be taken across the board on this. Again, moving on. So one of the bigger endpoint protection users have released a report, and they've said that they've seen a big shift in the top SMS scam types, with prize, lottery, and survey scams catching up to shopping scams. Together, they make up a massive 50% of all reported scams in January. So these are the organizations. So Netflix, Anytime Fitness, and DoorDash appear to be the top brands used by SMS scammers. There's some interesting points that were made in there around, tips to try and keep you safe as an individual. I'd like to comment on some of those, because that was kind of interesting to me.
I mean, I think the key thing is the awareness is good. But you shouldn't just be clicking on these links. And I think one of the challenges is that these scammers get smarter and smarter in terms of being able to fake whether it's a URL or the messaging coming across. So you really do need to be, rather than clicking on the link, checking with whether it's Netflix or whether it's Anytime Fitness, actually checking with the organization themselves to find out whether these discounts or whatever it might be are actually real or not. So I think education's part of it, the awareness is part of it, but just don't click on those links. If you're unsure, contact that organisation and find out from them what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, scam check is a big thing. I mean, sort of go through to the organisation, go to their official website rather than clicking on a link. You're absolutely right. Stay cautious and question every SMS that you get. Better safe than to be scammed, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
Friends will forgive you, right? Right
and
then.
I guess the other, just before I think the other thing to mention is, and I think it's a little way off, but the scam prevention framework, I think we touched on that maybe a week or two ago. So that passed into law. It's probably about a month ago now. There is a long way to go. So there's a framework in place, but there's a lot of laws and rules. Sectors have to be identified. Consultation has to happen. There's a long way to go to actually put the detail around that particular framework. But this is the sort of thing that it will address these SMSs amongst everything else, the other scams that go on. But this particular framework will try to address and reduce these sorts of scams.
Yeah. I agree, and that's really good advice. So moving on quickly then, limited time this week. Headline from Cyber Daily AU: healthcare organisations must step up their cybersecurity posture. 2 weeks after it was first revealed that it was a victim of a comprehensive cyber attack, Australian fertility clinic Genia is still going through the laborious process of working out exactly what data has been impacted. I think the interviews that I've seen on this, they were claiming to be a victim again, and it's really kind of, I don't know who was advising them from a PR perspective, but you can't outsource risk, for goodness sake. I mean, that's just a daft thing to be trying to say. But the things that are coming out of this is that health is quite clearly a prime target, and the Genia attack itself, obviously they've released some pretty sensitive data. It's not an area for the light-hearted, right? It seems to me that there's a complete lack of a single standard here in Australia, whereas they've got HIPAA in the US. I mean, am I misreading that?
Oh, well, I think we've talked about this before. There's a patchwork here in Australia. So you've got Privacy Act legislation. That there is health-related legislation in terms of records, but that varies between federal and state as well. So there's different legislation between. So there's different layers, and this always complicates things as well in terms of who do you report to when there's a data breach like this. And we are aware that Genia, or however you say it, has reported to the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. They're dealing with the ACSC and their cyber centre, their coordination centre. So they're reporting to all the rogue authorities. But there is legislation there. But I think like with everything, it's sectors get complacent. They don't invest enough in their systems, in their people, process, and technology. And I mean, I think what we tend to see is that you would imagine that other entities within the healthcare sector will be going, okay, we maybe need to look at this. When we know that healthcare has always been one of these leading sectors that are vulnerable to cyber attacks. We see the impact of that. I mean, the amount of days down that this site has been impacted by, the amount of cost. And really what we need to see is the consequences. So, because, until we see those legislative consequences, the penalties being imposed, behaviours just won't change.
Yeah, that's the biggest worry. I mean, and this report was suggesting that up to a third of hospitals do not have the highest level of protection in place. There's some real challenges here. I mean, the report states that the healthcare industry has become, sort of one of the most targeted sectors for cyber criminals, and that there was some other piece in here that was suggesting that it's not just the big end of town. Yeah, small businesses, including medical practices, lose an average of $49,600 per attack, which is kind of frightening, really. And it's a burning issue for patients too. And what they're saying is that 82% of Australians fear unauthorized access of their health records. So, this sort of like could do better report card for health is coming more into the spotlight.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Look, on that note, Robert, that's a lot of content to pack into 1 week. That was Chat DPS for this week. Thanks for joining us again, everybody out in the workplace. Look forward to catching up with you again very soon.
Thanks, Nick.
Can you find